So folks, thanks so much for joining us for another session of Meet the Outfitter. And tonight we're going to be learning about Hearst Air Services, and we're really fortunate to be joined by Melanie Veilleux, who is I'm going to call you the operator of Hearst Air. And before I pass things over to Melanie, I want people to know that I have fished with Hearst Air on a number of occasions. So certainly your questions about bookings and all that kind of stuff, go to Mel. But if anybody does want to talk about, offline about what the experience is with Hearst Air, I'm certainly happy to do that. So let's pass things over to you, Mel, and you can tell us, why don't you start? Why don't you tell us about Hearst Air?
A little bit about us. Well, we're a fly-in operator. We're based up in Hearst, which is on the northernmost tip of Highway 11 up in Ontario. We're the only outfitter here in our town, but our neighbors would be Hornpain, White River, Cochrane to the east, and Nakina to the west. So all of our outposts are north of Highway 11, anywhere from 50 miles to 400 miles up to the Hudson Bay. So we've been in operation for 42 years, or sorry, 43, I should say. My parents started this 43 years ago, and my father was always passionate about flying, and it was a second career for him. So he just gave up everything, his full-time job, and working for the township and pension and all that good stuff, and decided to start flying and becoming a tourist outfitter. So luckily for us, that's what he did, and he's loved it ever since.
Awesome. Here, so I just want to put this up on the screen in case people aren't familiar where Hearst is. There it is up on the screen, so you can kind of landmark it.
That's right. So yeah, that's Hearst. The highways come in. There's no commercial air service or airport that you can fly to, but there is the rail. We used to have the rail from the Sioux come all the way. A lot of people know that, which they can't take anymore. But it's a good day's drive from either Southern Ontario or Michigan area. But it's worth the drive.
Sure is. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, we know you'll be working 12 months of the year, but as far as your guests, what's the season, so to speak, when it comes to the fishing and hunting operations for you?
Sure. So the tourist season goes from May for the walleye opener into the end of October. So we're fishing May to September, and then we start moose hunting at the end of September and all of October.
Awesome. And sometimes people will say, well, listen, fishing is great in the fall. Why would you close down early? But I don't think that they realize that October, where your camps are, is a little different than October down in southwestern Ontario.
For sure, yeah. September is still a really nice month and great fishing. But I would say by the end of September, that's when the weather really starts to change, and it's kind of hit and miss for walleye. Big pike, it doesn't matter. That's caught all the time. But the walleye seem to be a little more temperamental when there's drastic changes in weather. So we do have people that love coming only at the end of September, and that's their favorite time, and they know the lakes at that time. They know how to fish them, and they do really good. But usually we let go of the fishing by then, and we start moose hunting.
Great. So we're going to talk tonight about, fishing, and we're going to talk about hunting as well. But maybe why don't you walk us through the species that people have access to through your company? So obviously, we'll start here with the big ones, the Northern Pike.
Yes. So I find that Northern Pike are caught everywhere. The smaller lakes that we have, or the local lakes we call, they all have pike, and every once in a while you'll get a big pike. But we do have lakes that are particular to trophy pike if you go a little further north. So I find that the lakes that are fed from the bigger rivers, like the Albany, the Attawapiskat, they produce monster pike. So we do have people that come just for them, and then they have, you know, the bonus of catching walleye at the same time.
Right. So we have Northern Pike. Obviously, you mentioned that you've got walleye that people can fish for.
Yes, yes, lots of pickerel, and that as you see there is pretty much an average size, 18 to 20, 22 inches. Every once in a while you'll get bigger, but the lakes, that's a typical lake walleye, but just a lot of them.
Nothing wrong with that. Now, for those that like to
right.
go a different species, you've also got some, I think, jumbo perch.
Yes, yeah. The perch fishing, I don't know that a lot of people come just for perch, but all the lakes have perch, and that's a very typical size that you see there. We have some groups that, well, this always makes us laugh because when we go fishing, there's nothing really technical about it, but some people like to follow the moon cycles and all that good stuff. So they are very, very serious about their perch fishing, and when they come for that full moon, and they nail it. But really, all the lakes have perch.
Well, that's how you get those big pike too, right? They got to feed on something.
That's right.
So we're going to spend some time talking specifically about one of your camps, but maybe, I don't know if everybody knows that you also have access to brook trout. So maybe we'll go quick on brook trout because I think we want to spend some time talking about the Sutton River, towards the end.
Sure. So some of the outfitters a little south of us have the luxury of having the 3 species in their lakes and creeks and access to all 3. But for us, it's pike and walleye, and the trout that we do is brook trout fishing up at the Sutton River. And it's a very well-known destination, but that's trophy brook trout fishing.
Great. All right, so let's slide in here and talk about the camp. So you run outpost camps, and I'm familiar with what an outpost camp is, but maybe if you could describe for some of our listeners who maybe they haven't done a fly-in trip before, maybe they don't know what an outpost trip is. Can you tell us what an outpost means?
Sure. So the outpost camps are isolated. They're on remote lakes. So they're typically on lakes where that is the only cabin on the lake. So for us, once we drop you off somewhere, there is one camp, that one outpost camp on the lake, and you have the lake to yourselves for the week, as opposed to a grouping of cabins like a lodge or a housekeeping lodge where you have multiple groups at the same time. When you're going to an outpost, typically you are the only group on that lake, and that's the only cabin on the lake.
Yeah, so I mean, you're basically renting your own private oasis, for the time you're there. Now let's talk a little bit about what you have access to. So I mean, obviously these are remote from destinations, but they are far from without the comforts that you need. So let's start with boats. So I mean, we can see a boat in this picture, which I think would be your typical aluminum 14 or 16 foot boat, depending on where you are. Is that fair to say, the boat makeup?
That's right. Yeah, most of the lakes have 14-foot aluminums. These boats that you see here are freighter canoes. They're 20-foot freighters, and they're used on the northern rivers. But the lakes have the 14-foot aluminums.
Perfect.
We do have boat seats in all the boats as well, which is nice. Makes it comfortable. So you get one boat for every 2 fishermen in the group.
Right, and then of course the motors are there, the fuel's provided, and if I'm not mistaken, you also have a spare, in case something happens to one of the motors.
Yeah, for sure. So for example, if you've got a group of 6 people, then you'll have 3 boats, and then there'll be a spare engine there. So if anything happens to it, or someone happens to hit a rock and bust something up, there's always a spare, so you can keep on fishing. Yeah. That never happens, right?
Never. So listen, I can say that those boats and motors run like a charm, so they're great. Now, obviously all of the cabins are different, but generally speaking, can you tell us what the cabins layouts and features are?
Sure. So what you see here is very typical of the outposts we have. We have propane appliances. So you'll see the fridge there with a small freezer, but you can make ice in there and keep some fish in there. The propane stove with an oven, a 4-burner stove. All the pots and pans are in the cabins, dishes, cutlery. So you really don't need to bring anything in the kitchen other than a fillet knife or a multi-tool.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of dishes there. We have some cast iron frying pans as well. Some people like to bring them out on the lake if they have shore lunch, or right there. So that's for the kitchen. There's also a barbecue and a propane fish fryer outside at every camp. And then for heat, you've got your wood stove. For lights, you got the lanterns. And typically there's 2 separate bedrooms, so they'll sleep 8 people. So 4 per room, and we do have Hilmer can go up to 10 people, but you got to make sure everybody really gets along.
Yeah,
because it gets a little tight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, depending on the cabin you go to, I mean, you've got a stove you can cook on, an oven you can bake in, a fridge to keep things cold, freezer if you need that. You got heat, you got lanterns. I mean, really, you're not wanting for anything, even though you've been dropped off for some people would consider to be in the middle of nowhere.
That's right. It's the basics, but when you speak of what you really need or what is essential, we're all learning the new word, essential for life, right? That's really all you need to be comfortable, and it's very simple, but it really is all you need.
Yeah. Now you've touched on this
and
a little bit.
Pots. Lots of coffee.
Yeah, and you mentioned this a little bit, but as far as the equipment, really, all of the stuff that you would cook with, the basic supplies are there. You're going to bring your own food in, but you don't have to worry about bringing in plates and pots and cups and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
I do see sometimes one of the guys will be very particular about a frying pan and that kind of thing. You obviously want to make sure that you have a good frying pan in the cabin. And look, we're not always cleaning up the camps between guests, so if you're particular about a certain item, then obviously you can bring that, but everything is really there to check up on. So
one thing that I think is important to talk about with people is, you're flying on a plane, right? And so there's a couple things to consider there. And I know that every outfitter is going to have weight restrictions about how many pounds per person that can come in. And I know that is based on both the safety of the plane and the capacity of the plane and the stuff that's coming back out. But maybe why don't you walk us through a little bit about what your weight restriction is and kind of your thoughts on weight and packing.
Sure. So yeah, typically you'll see weight restrictions be around the 100-pound per person mark. The capacity of the airplane, that's a legal thing. It's a safety thing, but it's also a legal thing. We cannot put more than that on the plane. So depending on the size of your group and which plane will bring you in, because you'll have smaller planes like Cessnas or a Beaver, and then you'll have an Otter or a Caravan. Obviously, they carry a lot more stuff, but you can't guarantee what plane you're going to get on the dock. So it's always better to just say, look, you make your 100-pound of gear per person limit. And once you get to the outfitter, I know that's how we do it anyhow. If we can squeeze in an extra 20 pounds because there's room on the plane, we can do that. But you really have to be prepared for your 100 pounds. Yeah. And you have to figure too, if you're 4 guys or 4 people, and 400 pounds of gear, that includes your food and beer and beverage. Yeah. It's not just 100 pounds of equipment per person. Yeah. So that's not the idea. There is not to limit people's fun. It's just that's all the plane can do. So sure. Some people, are very good at making their weight limits. Other people want more, and I completely understand that. That's your trip. So we'll be glad to get another plane full of gear in for you.
So I can tell you with experience that there's no reason why people can't have everything that they need and fit within those rate restrictions. I can also tell people that, and we're not going to name names, there are outfitters that have lower weight limits than that. So 100 pounds is actually pretty generous. But folks, if you're interested, Melanie and I were talking before we got started about this, about maybe we should do like a session like this where we give tips and strategies on how to pack light and pack small. So stay tuned, for that one.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
So let's talk about your actual camps, like the choices. And so I know that, your first category that you call the Northern Outpost Camps are the ones that are geographically closer to your plane base. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we call them the local camps just because they're the closest. They're about 50 to 65 or 70 miles from base. That's about a 30-minute flight. And we've kind of grouped them together. The only reason is because they're at the same price point.
Yeah.
Once you get further, obviously, the further you fly, the more expensive it's going to be. So these ones here, the 5, are all within the same price range.
Right. Well, that's great. Let's take a look at these. So let's start with Hilmer, which I've been to. Maybe you can give us a bit of a rundown on that, and we'll keep going through each of the camps.
Yes, Hilmer is a favorite amongst a lot of people because it's got a nice sandy beach in front of the cabin, which is really rare for our area. Unfortunately, we're not known for our beaches in Northern Ontario. So to have a nice sandy beach to wash makes it really nice. The lake itself is very, very good for pike and walleye and perch. It's got great structure, about 12 to 15 feet on average, and some deeper spots up to 40 feet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it is, and a comment here from one of your, obviously a past guest, says Hilmer is an awesome walleye lake. So yeah, we would agree with that. So we start, and by the way, folks, we're not putting these in any ranked order. These are, these are not bigger, better camps. These are just different. So after Hilmer, I think we got Wanzatika. Maybe walk us through that.
Yes, Wanzatika is another favorite for a lot of pickerel, and some big pike caught in there too every once in a while. It's not a trophy pike lake, but there's lots of pike and perch. So I think in structure and size, it's very comparable to Hilmer Lake. The cabin is built the same. You'll see that we kind of gave it a facelift, so the front of it looks a little bit different, but it is still a 2-bedroom log cabin. It's the only cabin on the lake. It's set up on a rock, so it's kind of nice to have a fire out there there's always a breeze, which makes it a lot easier for the bugs because we got a lot of bugs.
It's the north.
But yeah,
you're good.
It is
good
the
again.
north. Yeah. No bugs now, though.
No, not. Well, if you do, we're in trouble. So listen, I'll take a look here. Got some more people watching. I mean, for folks that are watching, if you've got bookings for this year with Mel, we encourage you to take that, direct to Mel. You know how to get a hold of her. I think we're all itching to get out there. Let's take a look at McCleister then. I think I'm saying it's McCleister, not McCleister.
McCleister.
McCleister, yeah.
Yep. So McCleister is on a really nice lake, a little smaller than Hilmer and Wanzatika, smaller in size, and it's shallow. But when the water levels are high enough, you've got 7 miles of river to fish. So a lot of people like that one. It's the way it's shaped. It's a lot easier to get around when the winds are up. You always have a little bay to get into, and then that river is a lot of fun too. For both pike and walleye. Yeah,
and folks, so I fished McCleister, and actually we weren't even thinking of the river when we went to that camp, but it turns out you're right, we had a lot of fun in there and caught some surprisingly large fish in that river. So it was a really nice surprise. Let's talk Sunshine.
Sunshine is on our very smallest lake, and kind of famous for producing our biggest pike. We had a 55-incher come out of that lake, but small, like 2 miles across at its widest. Very, very healthy little lake. Lots of walleye, perch, monster pike. For the size of the lake, I don't know what's going on. We're very protective of the lake and the stream that's coming in, and trying our best to work with, you know, the biologists when lumber companies need to get around there. Obviously that's inevitable, but it's just a beautiful little lake. So this one George had a long time ago and kind of let it go for a couple of years while the companies were in there for lumber extraction. But we decided to get back in there about, I want to say 10 years ago, something like that, and built this nice little cabin. And so it's one for two people to 4 people, lots of groups of 2 calling, sometimes father and son, couples. And this is kind of the easiest lake to fish. You can fish right off the dock. It's not big, so you don't have to worry about you know, boating a long time to get your limit. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you mention that, because I know that for some folks, that's important to them, that they don't have to spend, you know, they don't have to drive 90 minutes in a boat to get somewhere, you know. But, you know, these are lakes that, you know, end to end, you know, you might be 15, 20 minutes. So you're hitting most of your hot spots, you know, in like a 5-minute boat ride. Like it's really a treat.
Oh, for sure. And I find that, I mean, larger lakes are great because you've got a lot of water to explore, but some people are only coming for a half week, and you don't have a week to really find, you know, learn the lake too much or find the best holes to fish. So a smaller lake, I find people might be fishing a lot more and catching a lot more fish because they're not boating, they're not traveling, they're fishing.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Let's talk about the final one in that group of 5 is Martison. What can you tell us?
Martison is a great destination if you guys are into a lot of big pike early spring. The lake is a little bigger than those other ones we just talked about. It's about 6 miles long, very shallow, so not a lot of structure to it, but in the spring it's phenomenal for a lot of big pike, great walleye fishing. And there's actually a trail to another smaller lake where we keep a canoe. So for those who like to have a little bit of an adventure and a challenge, they enjoy that. This is a lake that we used to use only as a hunting destination, but we've been fishing it as well. Great. So if you like fall and spring fishing, this is a really good choice.
Super. So just a reminder, folks, if you're just joining us, if you have any questions that you want to ask, you know, Mel, just type them into the comments box and we'll get to them. You'll certainly have time for questions at the end. So let's transition, Mel, off of your northern ones, the local camps, and then you've got 2 other ones that really are more about the bigger fish. So maybe what can you tell us about, you know, the distance, then we can take a look at each of these camps too.
Sure. So some people call and they ask right away for big pike. That's what they're after. So the destinations that are the best for that is Quants and Napkin. And getting into the northern rivers. That's where you'll find the biggest pike and a lot of them. Quant is about 110 miles out. Napkin's 155 miles. And they're much bigger lakes than the closer lakes that we were just talking about. Quant's is 6.5 miles and Napkin's 12 miles long. So there's a lot more water to explore. A group of 6 has a lot of fun with these.
Awesome. So Quants is a bit closer, you know, than Napkin. So you're saying, you know, it's designed for about 6 guests. Really, your target there is big walleye, big pike, but no shortage of walleye.
That's right. Still very good walleye fisheries, but the lakes. Every once in a while you get a big walleye, but they don't produce big walleye like the rivers do. But for big pike, yes, that's not a problem.
Yeah, and you know, everybody has a different, well, I think everybody's got a different opinion of what big pike is. So I can tell you on Hilmer, you know, I took a 42-inch pike out of Hilmer. Oh, now to me, that's a big pike. You know, it's no 55, but you know, stumbling into big pike are there, but you know, there's really a lot of what those mid-class, those, you know, 30 34 to 37 inch fish. Like those are great
For
fish to
sure.
catch, you know, and so quants, you can get, you know, more of the big ones. And why don't you talk to us a little bit about napkin?
Yeah, so napkin, same thing. Napkin's a really good destination for big pike. So when you find the good spots for that one, you're going to be averaging the 35 to 40 inch. So everybody should have their chance at 40 plus in the group. Still very good walleye fishery. We've got guys that go there just for the walleye. Again, it's not a very deep lake, but it's got really good structure, a lot of bays and creeks and rivers coming in and out of it. So it's has a lot of variety to it. The cabin here is 3 separate bedrooms, but it's still equipped for 6 people. And the thing about the napkin and quants too, we do have bigger boats there. There's 16-foot aluminums. So when the winds pick up, they're much trickier to get around on. So the big boats are nice.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, you know, we got some great options there for pike and for walleye, but then we've got this little gem, and I say little, but it's a gem. Why don't you tell us about Sutton River, where your brook trout are, and you know what the options are for folks that might want to fish this?
Sure. So the Sutton River is known for a lot of big trout. There are a few ways that you can do this. It's a river trip, it's a float trip. But where we bring people to is at Holly Lake. That's at the beginning of the river. And we work with Albert Chuckamolin and his family. So Albert's been there for a very long time. He is the owner of the camp at Holly Lake. Just meeting him and being with him, if you do have a chance to get his guiding services, is a trip in itself. So you can either stay with him and he guides you around the river, around the lake, or most of the guests are choosing to do the river on their own, and then they just bring all their gear, grab a canoe from Holly Lake, and make their way down the river all the way to Hudson Bay, where we pick them up.
Wow. So, you know, so in that case, so we got one option is to be at Holly Lake, and you know, you're guided with the fellow that's on site, and the other one is you're basically canoeing at your own pace. You're dropped off here, you've got to get here. How long it takes you to get there, kind of your choice, fish along the way.
That's right. It takes at least 7 days to do the whole river, but with 7 days, you need to really make camp every night, like move camps, every night to make your pickup date. So some people choose to do it in about 10 days. That at least that gives you the opportunity that if you get into some bad weather and then everything clears up and the fishing's phenomenal, you want to stay there for another 2 nights. So you don't feel as rushed on the river if you take a little longer. Obviously those dates have to be predetermined because we need to book the plane back to back and utilize that. But we're really flexible with how people want to enjoy the river. Some people will even go down the river only about 40 miles on their own and then have Albert go back to pick them up and bring them back to the main lake. So then they have a lake trout day or something with him. So we're very flexible, and any way you choose to do the Sutton River, it is the very, very best in a lot of big brook trout.
Great.
We do this trip in August. Sorry, go ahead.
I would say it sounds like a lot of choices, right? Like a lot of flexibility. It's not like you must do this or else. It's a vacation for these folks, and it sounds to me like you really cater to that.
For sure, it's about making sure they're getting a good trip, really. I was going to mention the season for this is a lot shorter as well. So we're doing this in August, the very end of July into the beginning of September. So August is when the Sutton has both sea run and native trout.
Cool. So I got to read this comment to you, Mel. It says, the Sutton is the trip of a lifetime. It ruined me for fishing anywhere else.
Yes, that's very typical. It's my absolute favorite one to book because the guys work very hard. I mean, It's a very mild river. There's no white water, no portaging, crystal clear. It's a fly fishing dream, but you got to remember you're setting up camp every night. You're past the tree line. So once you get to a certain destination, when it's windy, it's tough. So when they get off the plane after that trip, they're completely exhausted. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are they okay? And the first thing they say is, best time of my life. They look like they're going to drop dead, but they just, awesome. It really does ruin you, but it's an amazing vacation.
In a good way. So yes. let's shift here. Let's just shift gears here. I think we've done a lot of stuff on fishing, and folks, if you got questions about that, don't be afraid, just pop them into the comment box. Let's go into moose hunting now, and why don't you start us off and talk about the other side of the business now?
Sure. So we do moose hunting the end of September into October. And I find that that we do hunting for both the residents, Ontario residents and non-residents. But I think because of how the ministry is now with tags, and it's getting so much harder for Canadians to hunt, that we have a lot of Canadians, Ontario residents, that are calling and they're just going for the full package. So they don't even have to apply for tags. They just, you know what, set us up. We're just gonna, now we don't have to wait and see or try and apply with 10 guys and that kind of stuff. So we can do a do-it-yourself hunt for residents that apply for their own tags, bring their own gear. We fly them into a little lake. That's their own little lake for the hunt. Fly them back out. They're very self-sufficient. It's kind of a DIY kind of thing. And we go from that to a very full packaged hunt with tags and accommodations.
So one of the things that I know you mentioned to me was, and I think this is really important, is no matter when they hunt it, every site only has one group for the entire season. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So all the sites that we hunt, all the lakes, any lake that we bring them to, they will be the only hunters hunting for the moose that are there. So whether they shoot or not, we won't bring in another group afterwards.
Great stuff. Okay, so we have one option there where the resident gets their own tag. You also have that. We have guides that are available here. Let's talk about this picture here. Shows some folks here, and I believe that they're doing a tent version.
Yeah, so this is what we would call a do-it-yourself kind of thing. You apply for your own tags. You call us up, and we'll go over the map with you. Choose a lake that you want to go to, and then we're basically providing just the transportation in and out. A site that we can guarantee only them will hunt. Yep. And their moose flown out as well. Awesome. But they bring all their camping gear, canoe, tags, everything.
Got it. And then that would take us to another version here would be, where you might be providing, the tent as well.
That's right. Yeah. So we use the Outpost Camps that we fish out of. We hunt them as well. Okay. But we also set up tent camps on different sites on smaller lakes and some river systems. So same thing, that it'll only be hunted by one group. But this way we provide the tent camp, the tags, canoe, and all the flying required.
Yeah. And so, the tent that you're describing here it's not like your Coleman tent here. These are fully equipped. So maybe you could take us through, what's the equipment look like on these?
Sure. So most of the sites that we're setting up on, we have a wooden platform. So as you can see, this one here makes it nice and clean inside. So we'll put beds, table and chairs, cook stove, pot, a wood stove for heat, and a camping kit for the dishes. Mm-hmm. Other than that, they bring their equipment and whatever they need.
Awesome. And I think our next one here, talks about, the complete one as well. And this would be where really this is them going to your outpost. Is that accurate?
Well, either the outpost or the tent camp that I just showed you.
Okay.
Um, this just means we're also providing tags, um, the accommodations, of course, boat motor and gas, the flights in and out, the moose out. So same thing, but it's the idea that like a group of 4, I could give them 3 to 4 tags. Um,
Awesome.
2 bulls and a cow, sometimes 3 bulls and a cow for 4 hunters. Depends on the area and how many tags we get allocated that year. But they have the option for going home with a lot of meat.
Yeah. Here's a question. It's a great question here. It says, with the outpost being, so remote, what about things like staying in touch in emergencies? Do we have communication options?
Sure. So we have satellite telephones for rent,
Mhm.
and the new InReach by Garmin is a great little toy, and I think a lot of people are coming with their own now. So that one is not voice, like you can't call, but you can text back and forth, and it also has a GPS on it. They're really good. So we do have 2 of those for rent, and we have satellite telephones for rent as well.
Yeah, that's great. And I can say, and this is not a promotion for it, I use one of the InReach devices myself,
Very
and
good.
they're great for two-way texting. One of the features on those devices that some people don't recognize the value of is pulling weather reports.
Okay.
So you can actually pull weather forecasts for the area that your device is located on, because you know how the weather is. What it says, the weather's going to be when you fly in is not what you necessarily experience.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's a great question there. So let's. I think that kind of. Is there anything else that we should be covering when it comes to the moose hunting, Melanie?
No, I think that's about it. I'm assuming there's a little more residents maybe online with us right
Yep.
now. Um, if there's if you're looking at a map and there's an area that looks interesting to you, just give me a call and we can go over it online together. And we can always find a spot, even if it's somewhere we've never been to. I can suggest different areas, and then we just price it as per the distance, really.
Right.
So you're just chartering the airplane. We will bring you absolutely anywhere you want to go, whether it's for hunting or even fishing, because there's a lot of beautiful rivers up there. The Albany, the Alpscat. We do a lot of groups that are paddlers too. They're not even fishermen; they're just canoeing. So anything you want to do up north, that's our specialty.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So one of the new things that you wanted to talk about is Brunswick Lake Lodge. Maybe you could cover this for
That's
us.
right. So Brunswick Lake Lodge is not new, but it's new to us. We've been managing it. It will be the 2nd season. So we're helping a group of owners with the bookings and administration and just taking care of the lodge. It's an absolutely beautiful property on a really nice lake. It's about 17, I don't know this one by heart. I think it's about 17 miles. Really good structure. It's not a very deep lake, so it's a really, really good walleye lake. Pike and perch as well, but just it was very, very constant. I was really looking forward to our first season last year to see how the weather would affect the fishing throughout the summer. And I'll tell you what, it was constant. It's just a beautiful place. Very easygoing lodge. It's a housekeeping lodge, so it's not American plan. You're fishing on your own schedule. You bring your food. You eat when you want. It's very relaxed and a gorgeous place. So you
Great.
can always give me a call and go check it out online.
That's great. So we got both. You got so many options, right? So you got the near camps, the further camps. You got the Sutton River. You got Brunswick, and then frankly anywhere else that your planes can land. You've got it all covered.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. We have some fishermen that love a custom trip and feeling a little adventurous. We'll drop you off anywhere on the map.
Awesome. So that kind of brings us in. So I'll take a look here, give people a last chance to type in a comment or a question. But what we've got up on the screen there, in addition to a spectacular photo that Melanie took, is
Mhm.
the website for Hearst Air, the telephone number that you can call at any point, and the email that Mel can be reached at. So if you've got questions about anything that we've covered tonight, that's the spot to go. And then I've also put my coordinates there. If you have any questions about things that I've done, you can reach me by email. And I put the YouTube channel up there because that's where all of these videos are going to be stored, so you can come back and watch them anytime. So I'm just going to give it one more thing. And by the way, if anybody misses, you're watching this later, don't forget, use the emails and telephone numbers on the screen so that you can reach out for us. So I think that brings us to a landing. So Mel, thanks so much for doing this tonight. I think I thought it was great, and we've had a lot of people that have been on the session tonight watching. So I think you've helped people get excited about once they can get out there and enjoy the outdoors in Ontario.
Good. I sure hope so. And thank you very much, Scott. I think you got a great idea here, and I look forward to watching the other videos with the other outfitters.
Well, let's hope you're too busy to do that. So
Yeah.
thanks everybody for joining in tonight, and everybody have a great night. Stay safe, and we'll see you again. Take care, everyone.
See ya.